Shalom. We are back. We today are going to be continuing with our look at the book of Shemot, Exodus. We're looking at Exodus chapter 3. We just got into book of Exodus the other week. We're going to continue on with the story of looking at it, Moshe, and see his early beginnings, as well as Israel as a nation. So we want to go ahead and get into this. Let's see here. We'll pull up the verses. We'll go ahead and read the chapter in its entirety, and then we'll come back and go over the key points. So let me pull up the verses here. Get started. Okay, if you can just read that. It's loud.
Chapter 3, okay. Exodus chapter 3. And Moshe was shepherding the flock of Yethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and led the flock to the back of the wilderness, and came to Horeb, the mountain of Elohim. And the messenger of Yahweh appeared to him in the flame of fire from the midst of the bush. And he looked and saw the bush burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. And Moshe said, "Let me turn aside now and see this great sign, why the bush does not burn." And Yahweh said that he turned aside to see, and Elohim called to him from the midst of the bush and said, "Moshe, Moshe." And he said, "I am here." And he said, "Do not come here. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you stand, what you are standing, is set apart ground." And he said, "I am the Elohim of your father, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Yitzchak, the Elohim of Jacob." And Moshe hid his face, for he was afraid to look at Elohim. And Yahweh said, "I have indeed seen the oppression of my people who are in Mitzrayim, and have heard their cry because of their slave drivers. For I know their sorrows, and I have come down to deliver them from the hand of the Mizraimites, and to bring them up from the land to a good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to a place of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites. And now, see, the cry of the children of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Mizraimites oppressed them. And now, come, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Mitzrayim." And Moshe said to Elohim, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Mitzrayim?" And he said, "Because I am with you, and this is to you the sign that I have sent you, where you have brought the people out of Mitzrayim. You are to serve Elohim on this mountain." And Moshe said to Elohim, "See, when I come to the children of Israel and say to them, the Elohim of your fathers have sent me to you, and they shall say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them?" And Elohim said to Moshe, "I am that which I am." And he said, "Thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent you." Okay, and Elohim said further to Moshe, Thus, you are to say to the children of Israel, Elohim, Yahweh, Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Yitzchak, the Elohim of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my remembrance to all generations. Go, and you shall gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, Yahweh Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, of Yitzchak and Jacob, appeared to me, saying, I have indeed visiting you and seen what is done to you in Mitzrayim. And I say, I am bringing you up out of the affliction of Mitzrayim to the land of the Canaanite and the Hittite and of the Amorite and of the Perizzite and the Hivite and the Jebusite to the land flowing with milk and honey. And they shall listen to your voice, and you shall come, and you shall come, you and the elders of Israel, to the sovereign of Mitzrayim, and you shall say to him, Yahweh Elohim of the Hebrews has met with us, and now please let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness to slaughter to Yahweh our Elohim. But I know that the sovereign of Mitzrayim is not going to let you go, not even by a strong hand. And I shall stretch out my arm and strike Mitzrayim with all my wonders, which I shall do in its midst. And after that, he shall let you go. And I shall give this people favor in the eyes of the Mizrahites. And it shall be that when you go, you shall not go empty-handed, but every woman shall ask from her neighbor and from the stranger in her house objects of silver and objects of gold and garments. And you shall put them on your sons and your daughters and shall plunder the Mizrahites.
All right. Very good. So let's go back now and look at a few things over here. So if we go back to verse 1, we see that Moshe, it says Moshe was shepherding the flock of Yethro, his father-in-law. So we want to look at that real quick. Let me get the tools out here. Okay, so it says shepherding. I want to look at this word here. KJV says he says kept, right? Now Moses kept the flock. Let's see here. Shepherding or kept is this word here, which is ra'ah, which actually looks like another word. It looks like the word that means to see. It sounds like, I should say. But the word is a primitive root. It means to tend to a flock, that is pasture, to graze, to rule, by extension to associate with, companion, keep company, eat, with herdmen, sheep shearer, all of these things. So when you think about a shepherd, that shepherd, he leads the flock to water. He leads them to their food. He protects them with his shepherd's staff. He leads them along the way. There's all of these things, and we see that Moshe here, as this shepherd, was kind of preparing, getting himself ready unknowingly to be the shepherd of Israel. He had this, his regular job, I guess, was this thing that he would end up doing, from a different angle, instead of sheep, right? He's shepherding a nation. So he's really being prepared while he's out here in the in the wilderness with Yethro and his family. Also, the text tells us, whenever it talks about Yethro, his father-in-law, it doesn't leave out the fact that he is the priest. He's a priest of Midian. Also, when you think about, Moshe and, looking at this, really, there's part of his life as being a kind of preparation. When we think about Moses, when we think about Moshe, he is the example of the first example that we have of the king priest, right? He wasn't a literal king, but for all intents and purposes, he was the king of Israel. He wasn't anointed the priest, but he performed the priestly duties to anoint the priest. So in all intents and purposes, he was the first actual priest, because he's the one that did all of the things to the first priest in order to kind of dub or make them even be the priest. And so when we look at, again, we look over here in verse 1, and we see that Moshe, is out here shepherding the flock with his father-in-law, the priest. It helps us to see kind of, we can get a little even backstory just from the, this verse here, understanding that, in these jobs that he was doing, these relationships that he had, it was training him for, it was getting him ready for something that, really, changes everything, right? He's getting ready to do probably one of the most important things that ever happened to Israel. On one side we see, really the birth of the nation, and in the in the process of this happening, we see with the Exodus and all of this that happens, and the joining of the people to the Most High, all with Moses kind of at the helm, where from the reading we see that he was picked and chosen from the Most High to lead the people out of bondage. Right, but I just thought it was interesting that when we look, at this first verse over here, we're able to see, he had some training that he didn't necessarily realize was going to be training. Right. Okay, so when we look at the second verse, another thing that we see over here at the second verse here, is the messenger of Yahweh appeared. Right? The King James, angel of the Lord, the angel of Yahweh, the messenger of Yahweh, is what it's saying appeared in the bush. The messenger of Yahweh appeared to him in the bush as it was burning. Right? And so when we think about the angel of Yahweh, the manifested presence of Yahweh, this word angel here, let's see, click on it, is malach, which means to dispatch as a deputy, messenger, specifically of Elohim, angel, also a prophet, priest, or teacher, ambassador, angel, king, messenger. When we think about like an ambassador goes forth with, all of the power and all of the authority of the sender, right? So when you have an ambassador who's going and representing a particular group or entity or individual, that ambassador is coming by the authority and possessing the authority of whoever it is that that sent them. And the same, I guess, idea we see with the word deputy. If somebody's a deputy, he is the one who's kind of administering or delivering or executing the power of the sheriff or the sheriff's office, right? And so that's the word that's used over here. But when we look at the various scriptures and verses that talk about the messenger or the angel of Yahweh, it's always the understanding that it's Yahweh that who's speaking, or that's who is communicating with the people over here, right? And so let's see here. This I have this commentary. It's a special revelation through theophanies. Theophanies are physical meetings with Elohim, is what the word means. Okay, so this is the goal, it says, toward which the whole story of the Bible points. Elohim is forming a people for himself who will enjoy eternal face-to-face communion. Therefore, these theophanies or temporary experiences of that same communion can teach us about what it means to be in the presence of Elohim. And so when we look over here, we're seeing this bush that's burning, right? It's burning, but it's not burning up, which is an interesting thing. Usually if you see something burning, like it's fire there and it's being consumed. And so this thing over here, this bush is on fire. There's fire there. The bush is burning, it says, but the bush is not consumed. And so again, we think about this meeting that's going on, this encounter that is happening with this angel of Yahweh in the midst of this burning bush. We're able to kind of gain some type of understanding of the Almighty in a way, as to where we see this kind of phenomenon, this thing happening with this fire, right? It helps us to understand a bit, I would say, with kind of a thing that we could think about in terms of the makeup of the Almighty, in terms of him being this light, this fire that's burning. When you think about a fire and it burning and the fuel source being consumed, eventually it's going to go out, right? Because the fuel source is gone. And so, but when we think about this picture over here, where we see this bush that's on fire, but it's not being consumed, it's almost as if you have like a unending fuel source that never stops, right? And so you have this fire that's there, this unquenchable fire, right? That's representing the Most High. And so, again, it's interesting that we see the Most High kind of revealing himself to Moshe in this way, because even in this kind of strange way that he's doing it, even in this strange way, we can still see kind of things that help us to even understand who he is, right? And so again, when we look at this angel of Yahweh, this messenger of the Most High, it causes us to think about a few scriptures that I want to pull up over here. Let's look over here at Colossians 1. I'm going to start with 13. If you could read 13 through 16. 13 through 16.
Who have delivered us from the authority of darkness and transferred us into the reign of the Son of his love, in whom we have redemption through his blood and forgiveness of sins, who is the likeness of the invisible Elohim, the firstborn of all creation, because in him were created all that are in the heavens and that are on the earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or rulerships or principalities or authorities. All have been created through him and for him.
Okay, very good. So when we look and see Yeshua, it's talking about Messiah over here. And it says that he is the likeness of the invisible Elohim. Yeshua is the likeness of the invisible Elohim. And so it seems as if this verse is trying to tell us something, that if we see something, if we say that we've seen the Most High, what we probably seen was Yeshua, because Yeshua actually is the likeness of the invisible Elohim, the unseeable. What's that word mean? Let's see. Invisible. It probably just mean invisible. It's Greek. It's not really that. Yeah, it's not. You can't see something that's invisible, right? But what we see is Messiah, who is the likeness of that which is invisible. let's look at John 1:18. John 1:18. What does that say?
That says, no one has ever seen Elohim, the only brought forth Son, who is in the bosom of the Father, he did declare.
No one has ever seen Elohim. Except for all those times when we seen where people said that they seen Elohim.
But they did. Did they really see him?
Well,
it's a manifest because he manifests different ways. And people, and then you look up at those scriptures, they be like, they seen him, and then you look at what that thing was, and it'd be like, it's a messenger. Was that him?
Or did they see Yeshua? Or did they see Yeshua?
I'm saying they saw the one who's the likeness of the invisible Elohim, who is Yeshua. All right. Nobody has seen Elohim, but we got all of these places where we can look at scripture where people have these encounters. Abraham, Jacob, over here Moses sees the angel of Yahweh. Other places where we saw the angel of Yahweh be used, like with Abraham, the messenger of Yahweh came, but then it was Yahweh who was there, right? And so we have these instances where we could look back and see where people are saying that they are having these intimate meetings with the Most High. And then over here, we see where John says no one has ever seen Elohim. But then we also see where Paul talks about this idea that that Yeshua actually is the image of the invisible Elohim. So if we look and see an image, we must be seeing Yeshua the same. Because Yeshua is the actual image of the invisible Elohim. Let's look at this.
So we get. Oh, never mind.
Well, you got one? All right, let's look at this, and then we'll see what you got over there. 14:9. What's 14:9 say?
So it says, Yeshua said to him, have I been with you so long, and you have not known me, Philip? He who has seen me has seen the Father. And how do you say, show us the Father?
They over here talk about we want to see the Father. Meanwhile, Yeshua's like, you seen me all this time.
What you want? What more you want?
You've been looking at me this whole time. If you seen me, you already done seen the Father.
So same book.
Yeah.
You done with that?
Yeah.
Same book. Chapter 4 and 24.
4:24.
Elohim is spirit, and those who worship him need to worship in spirit and truth.
Mm-hmm.
The spirit, can we see spirit?
Mm-mm.
The spirit manifests. It does manifest in the physical realm, and then clearly the physical manifestation is Yeshua. I'm in the spirit of the Elohim. This is what it is.
I've seen some shadowy creatures.
We ain't talking about the devil right here. We ain't talking about, we ain't talking about Satan and all that, but
yeah, so look, this John 3:8 says the wind blows where it wishes, and you hear the sound of it, but you do not know where it comes from and where it goes. So is everyone who has been born of the Spirit. The spirit is a word that actually means breath or wind. And so we could feel the wind, we could see the effects of the wind, but what do the wind look like?
Exactly.
Oh no.
That's
I don't know. Look, the cartoon make it look like this little swooshin' looking thing, right?
But it's particles that is manipulated.
Right,
You know what I'm
right,
saying? The
right.
essence of it, you can't see it, but you see the effect of it.
Yeah,
That's the biggest key.
yeah. And so again, when we think about the Most High being spirit, right? He's dealing with us as people that are flesh that he created. And so when he deals with us, he deals with us in a way that we're able to understand, right? And so he deals with us on this level. And so when we see Yeshua again, who is the image, he's the likeness of the image of the invisible Elohim. He is the physical manifestation of the Most High. And so when we see these things in the so-called Old Testament, in the Tanakh, in the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, when we see these meetings, these encounters, it's showing us that we're seeing Yeshua, before he came into the flesh, because Yeshua, is, as we saw, the image of the invisible Elohim. No man seen Elohim. So if you've seen Yeshua, if you've seen the Father, it's Yeshua that you've been actually seeing. And thus the angel of Yahweh. And so we see over here again in this situation where Moshe is being called into this great task that he is being called to perform. He's being met by the Almighty in this peculiar form of this burning bush, with this message. Someone asked, that's not a question, that's a statement. Okay. Okay, so let's keep on going over here, right? So verse 3, we gotta go back. To Shemot. And we see this other thing that's happening over here. Where it says, where Moshe said, let me turn aside now. Let me turn aside now and see this great sight. He's intrigued by this thing that's happening, why the bush does not burn. Right? He's seen this magnificent thing that doesn't make any type of earthly sense for him to be able to look at this bush that's on fire and it's not perishing, right? It's not diminishing. It's not being consumed, right? But I want to look at this thing that he's doing where it says to let me turn aside. Now, let's see here. Here we are. Turn aside is this word here, which is sewer. It's interesting that they have this with the sheen and the samek, which is interesting. Typically, when you have these letters change the whole word, right? So it's interesting that we have this word here where they're giving it to you with different letters. to get my etymological book out to see if indeed both of these words are giving you the same idea. But the definition that we have here is to turn off, to call back, to decline, depart, to leave, to pluck away, to remove, to take away, to turn aside, or to turn away, right? And so when we think about this now, what is it that Moshe is turning away from? Because he's clearly turning to the fire. So it seems as if he's turning away from something, and so that he could turn towards the fire, right? Because he wants to see why the bush isn't burning, right? So he's turning away from something where it says, let me turn aside now and see the great sight. He's turning away from something, and he's turning towards this thing that's happening over here.
From the flocks. Turn away from the flocks and the things, sort of like the things he was doing before he saw this great sight. Like it's like almost like turning away from the world, and you get on the right path and turn towards the Mossad.
Yeah.
Turn towards the Most High. Yeah. So it seems that's what he's turning away from.
Yeah, exactly. So when we think about what we're seeing over here, when we look at what's going on with Moshe as he's kind of stepping into his situation, this process, we're seeing the process, we're seeing this thing happen where the Mossad manifests himself to Moshe in a way that he understands. He knows this is a Mossad. Whatever he would have done, it would have been in a way that he was able to understand it and know that this is Elohim. For Moshe, it had to be this burning bush that didn't consume. When he saw that, he knew what he was looking at, what he was dealing with, and he knew that it was necessary for him to focus all his attention on what it was that was going to be conveyed by this burning bush, this messenger of the Most High, this the Most High himself, right? So it became necessary for him to turn away from all of the things, whatever those things was, his family, his father-in-law, his responsibilities. Even he had to focus all of his attention on the Most High and see what it was that the Most High was trying to say. How the Most High was going to be dealing with him. He had to get rid of all distractions, right? He had to get rid of all everything that didn't have to do with what was going on over here with this burning bush. So when we see this idea where it says to let me turn aside now, this is helping us to see what the process needs to be in order to even know or hear what it is that the Most High has for us to be able to hear, right? We got to turn things off, right? We got to turn ourselves away from, all of the things, right? Whatever the things are, we got to turn those things off so that we're able to get, because what did he say? He ain't said nothing, right? All he did was just manifest himself to Moshe at this time. All he did was let himself be known that he was there. Right? He ain't said nothing yet. Right? But what he did do was let Moses know. Moses knew that it was something that he needed to dedicate and focus all of his attention to, so that he could receive whatever it was that he was going to receive.
That sounds like it's in Colossians where it says, "Put off that old man."
Yeah.
Putting off the old man. It's like, because you can't receive whatever you need to receive with that old self. You can't come thinking or you know. So that Colossians 3:9. I think I'm ready for it.
Brothers, since you have put off the old man.
How far back you want to go?
I was just thinking about that one. I don't know that one part, that old man just popped in. Don't lie to each other, since you have put off the old man with his practices.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much just the main point right there.
When we think about, well, and look, and then verse 10 and have, all this is past tense, by the way. You have put off the old man with his practices, and have put on, you already put it on, the new one, who is renewed in knowledge according to the likeness of him who created him. And so when we think about our life in Messiah, our life in a right relationship with the Father, even this bears witness. There's a process, and the process involves moving away from old things and moving into new things, right? And so not even necessarily that when we look at what Moses was doing as if he was leaving wickedness, but the process, we see that he's focusing all his attention on the Most High and turning away from, because it just told us what he was doing. If you out there shepherding your flocks, you got to know, you got to be out there with your Hawkeye glasses on. Yeah, that's with your right. You got to be looking and aware and knowing what's going on when them ravenous animals come around and try to get at your flock, or they try to move off around the bushes where you can't see them at, and all of these things. You got to know what's going on. But again, it says Moses is like, let me focus on what's going on and see this great sight. And why is this? He's investigating this thing. Why isn't it burning up? Like, he's getting a closer look. He's moving closer. He's looking at it. He's like he's investigating the situation.
Yeah.
Right? He's getting a closer look. Right? Maybe he's seen it before and it seemed like it wasn't burning up.
Right.
But let me get over here just to see that it is really not burning up. And so we see him kind of focusing his attention, removing all the distractions, potential obstructions. That's maybe there was, like, the way he was standing, there was something that was kind of blocking and just made it seem like it wasn't burning up. But he was able to get closer and figure out, was it really burning up, right? But all of this is showing us kind of, again, this process that we have to have had at some point to establish a real relationship, or even maintain, for that matter, a real relationship with the Most High. in terms of removing distractions, getting obstructions out of the way, and making sure that we're able to hear and know what it is that the Mosa is trying to say and the direction they're trying to move us in. Right? We can't have these things going on in the middle that's blocking our view, or that's not allowing us to be able to hear all the things properly, right? And so again, we look at Moses, we look at Moshe, we're able to see this happening right before our eyes. We're able to see this process happening, in these 3 verses, right? And then, oh, wait a second. Okay, so when we see verse 4, where now it says Yahweh saw that he did this, right? And then now he talks to him. It says Yahweh saw that he turned aside to see, and then he calls out to him. Right? And so it's almost as if you see this thing that it seems as if Moses needed to do that thing so that the next part could even happen. Because it says, he literally says right there, he saw that he did that thing. And then now there's action on the Most High's part. Moses did the investigation. He removed all the distractions. He made a quiet space, right? He focused all his attention so that he could see. And then the Most High made himself available to him at that time. And so it's interesting now where we see over here where it says Yahweh saw that he turned aside to see. Oh, we're off of Exodus. Let me turn back. Let me turn the page back over here. To see is the word that sounds like shepherd, ra'ah, which is to see. So again, we think about the idea of seeing, this word from a Hebrew perspective. The idea of seeing is more than just looking and visibly seeing a thing, right? There's intimacy involved. Again, I said this before, we think about this idea of ra'ah, the word that tells us about the, hold on, let me see. It's got, oh wait, I got to pull up it's got to be either right before it or right after. Let's see here. Bird of prey. Yeah, see? The bird of prey. What's the difference between this? Let's see. It's identical, right? And so this word over here that means this bird of prey, which is ra'ah, this bird of prey, this thing that has this sharp eyesight, these things that see from far away. But if all they did was see from far away, it don't help their bellies one bit. They got to get in there and engage the thing that they see. And so it's interesting that the idea of seeing is the word for this bird of prey, because when we looking at what what Moses was trying to do with his seeing, it wasn't just about him looking at the thing. He wanted to experience the thing. He wanted to get in close and personal with the thing. right? He wanted to see it. And then also that shows us that he had a real desire to know. And then the Most High saw his desire to know, and then he dealt with him accordingly.
Right. He was able to discern, like, because who knows, the average person would have seen that bush, oh, it's just a burning bush, and because it says he didn't call out to him until he focused on it and was like, wait, that's different.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to make that discernment, to be like, hey, that's not normal. You know what I mean? It's more than what's, what we're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's you can see that there's intention involved on Moses's part, where it's not just mere curiosity. Like, he really wants to know and see what's going on, and he does the things that's necessary in order to actually know and see what's going on. And then again, we see where the Most High now deals with him, as a result of it, and calls out to him, as a result of it. And so again, when we look at this in terms of being this process, right? We look at Moses, we look at Moshe, right? The thing that the Most High had for him to do, he prepared him for it before he got to it, right? He got him ready for the task that he was getting ready to give him in his life before that. It wasn't like he just came out of nowhere and then just all of a sudden was like Moses. Like, he had like these qualities about him that was already in place. He knew about shepherding when he was about to become the shepherd of Israel, right? He knew about these things. He had these things that was inside of him that the Most High was about to pull out. And so, and we see that, we see all of this when we look at, Moses here being called to his destiny, right?
It seems like all of Moses' life, he was turning aside from things. He was turning aside from, being this prominent figure in Egypt. You know what I'm saying? He was turning away from the lap of luxury. He turned away from all of these different things. And each time he turned away, it led him closer and closer to the Most High.
Yeah.
And I've been looking at scripture, like Hebrews 12:1, where it says, turn away from every weight and sin.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference between a weight and a sin. A weight is not necessarily a sin.
Mm-hmm.
But both of these things, sin and the cares of life, just things you pick up along the way and start doing these different things, they can hinder you from your path.
Yeah.
It can hinder you from getting on track with the Mossad.
Yeah. Yeah. It don't have to be something that's sin that's holding you back or holding you down, right? It could be anything. Like we said when we looked over here with Moshe in the field, the thing that he was turning away from wasn't like he was a sinful thing. It was responsibilities of just a man's responsibilities of family and his task that he was called to do. That's what he was turning away from. But anything that you end up something that's not necessarily a sin, when you put it in a particular position, it could cause you to sin because of the position that you're putting the thing in.
Wouldn't that be like an idol?
it's exactly that.
Idleness.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
When we take these things that that are holding us back. That's keeping us from doing what the Most High will have for us to do. I mean, I guess it turns into being sinful. Not like the thing is a sin. It could be just like I don't know, reading books.
Yeah.
Right, where it's just like a thing that's like it's just a neutral thing. But if all the time and energy that you're putting into these things keeps you away from doing what the Most High has for you to do, now you turn this neutral thing into something that's not neutral anymore.
Yeah. Well, I know.
It's just it's this thing that's holding you back.
Yeah. What is that scripture that talks about if any man has left mother and I can't remember how that scripture goes, but it just talks about all of these things that are normal things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Normal things. Your mom, your family,
forsaken,
your friends.
forsaken all that stuff.
Yeah. Right.
The man who not forsaken father and mother and just this and that is not worthy.
They're worthy.
Right. Yeah. You gotta leave. There's one that talks about leaving your father and mothers, and one that talks about hating your father and mother to follow me. All of these things, in and of themselves, those your family, of course, there's nothing wrong with family. The Mosa, he smiles on family, but anything that we come and take and place in front of the Most High, especially when he has something for us to be doing, which, by the way, he has something for each and every one of us to be doing. But when we have these things that are holding us back from his work, those things are detrimental to our walk. And so when the Most High saw that Moshe was able to turn from those things, where he could have just been like looking at that fire and then looking back at his sheep and like kind of like conflicted, like it got my sheep over there, but there's this thing over here. I'm just gonna go just check them real quick and then I'll be right. What if the thing just went out?
Yeah.
Right? But he was able to at that moment see that thing and then hit something on the inside of him, be like, that thing is important. Let me see what this is over here. And the Most High dealt with him accordingly. What's that verse here? What was it?
What verse?
That
1929.
Matthew.
Yeah. Matthew 1929.
Yeah, what does that say there?
It says, and everyone who hath left houses or brothers or sisters or fathers or mother or wife or children or lands for my name's sake shall receive 100-fold and shall inherit everlasting life.
That's something right there, right? But you got to get to that place of doing that, right? You got to get to that place of doing that. You got to get to that place of putting the things that are of the Most High first on the priority list.
I would say, speaking to what you said about family, is that like I believe that this is talking about those who ain't on the path. You know what I mean? So like if your family is on the same path with you, striving towards the Most High, y'all are traveling together.
Yeah.
But those who are just, doing whatever they do, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to forsake all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely, yeah. Absolutely.
I got one. 2 Timothy 2:21. If then anyone cleanses himself from these matters, he shall be a vessel unto value, having been set apart of good use to the master, having been prepared for every good work, and flee from the lusts of youth, but pursue righteousness, belief, love, peace, with those calling on the master out of a clean heart.
Now, see, when I see something like this, right? When I see something like this, I don't know why I'm thinking of the opposite, but I don't know why it wouldn't be true, right? So, if then anyone cleanses himself from these matters, he shall be a vessel unto value. But is that to say that if he wasn't cleansed of the matters, then he don't have any value? He don't have any value, because you got to cleanse yourself of these matters, and then it says he, the one who done that, will be a vessel unto value.
I see it every day. People who don't do this, it's like they don't even exist.
It's a waste.
Yeah, they're just like walking around, like it's like they're not even here.
Yeah.
Nobody wants them. Everybody rejects them. Like, oh man, all right, go ahead. All right, see you.
Yeah. This, I mean, when we think about this again, and even we could just think about it in the context of Moses for a second, where again he did all of these things in his life that's leading up to this moment right over here, where he's getting ready to do the thing that actually defines who he is as an individual in history, right? And so, but it took him to get to that moment in that place of that transition where he's able to go and step into his destiny. And so, we could look around and see people every day, right? Who the Mossad has something for us all to be doing. But are we going to step into those shoes that he got waiting for us over there? He got some shoes over there waiting for us. Some brand new. He got some brand new J's just right over there for us, right?
Oh, that's how you went on me over. We got J's right over here for you.
They're right over there, the newest ones.
The spiritual J's. The latest.
Ain't sitting over there. Ain't nobody got these.
Yeah,
nobody got these.
Yeah, very few people can get them. You want the exclusives?
They just sitting over there waiting for you to put your feet in them. But people don't want them though. They free too. You don't got loot or nothing to get. It's right over there, free, just being offered to you. All you gotta do is accept the challenge. All right? But the people, they ain't doing it. But again, we look at Moses, he's the example. He saw the opportunity. He understood that this was something that was happening that was very peculiar, that he needed to see about. And when he went to see about it, the Mossad dealt with him accordingly. And so our situation is that, we're going to have these moments where the Mossad is going to show himself to us. Where he's going to make himself available to us. And then we got to say, am I going to do the thing, or am I just going to keep on doing what I've been doing? And it seems like we can see over here the perfect example of the process right over here, right? With Moses, and how he literally becomes who he becomes, right? Okay, so if we keep on going down now, if we jump down, all right, let me get back over to the right book here. If we drop down to verse 6. Drop down to verse 6 now. It says right here.
He said, I am the Elohim of your father, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Yitzchak, and the Elohim of Jacob. And Moshe hid his face, and he was afraid to look at Elohim.
Yeah, this part right here. Now we get to the place where he did all his investigation. He saw this thing that got his attention, where he looked. He got a closer look. He turned away from all of the things that was potentially hindering him, and he paid all the attention that he had to what was going on. And then now, this burning bush says to him, I am the Elohim. I am the Elohim of your father. So now he knows without a doubt who he's dealing with, right? And then it says he hid his face and was afraid to look at Elohim.
That's all right, because Genesis 3:8, Adam and Eve hid themselves from the presence of Yahweh Elohim among the trees of the garden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so again, when we look at looking at this as a process, right? We see that Moshe is going through these things. And now where he's gotten to the place where he knows and understand who it is that he's dealing with, now it says he was afraid to look at him. He was afraid to look at him, right? Let's look at this word. I got rid of my tools prematurely. He was afraid. Yahweh, fear. Morally, to revere, to frighten, affright, to be or to make afraid, dread or dreadful, to put in fear or fearful, reverence, so on and so forth, right? And so when we look over here, right, and we think about this what's going on, Moshe, when he understood who it was that he was dealing with, it wasn't just this bush that was burning, this miraculous thing that was happening. Not only that, but he's dealing with the Almighty. Now there's fear involved, right? A proper understanding of who it is that he was dealing with. The result of that was fear. And this is something that I think is important for people to be able to understand, because if people really understood who it was that you was dealing with, you wouldn't be behaving in these manners. A lot of people.
But what I'm wondering though is how did he know? Like he grew up in.
You said how didn't he know?
How did he know?
Oh.
If being raised as an Egyptian, like what fear did the Egyptians have or the Most High? Or how did was it already in his spirit to have that fear because clearly the Egyptians, to have fear, you would, reverence and serve the Most High or whatever. How did he, in his spirit, maybe Mosa already knew that he was going to be like that, but to hide his face and to be afraid of them.
Well, he already had an affinity to the people. Mm-hmm. We knew that because of the fact that whenever he saw the people who he was able to identify with as his people, he went ahead and slew the Egyptian. So at some point he understood that there was Egyptians and there was Hebrews, and even though he grew up with the Egyptians, that he wasn't an Egyptian and that he was actually a Hebrew. And so at the same time, I would say that there will have to be also some type of understanding of the God of the Hebrews, even though, again, he, growing up among the Egyptians, at some point he understood that he actually belonged to these other people. And so whatever degree it was that he knew of the Most High, it was enough where he was able to give the Most High his proper dues.
Well, you know what? I don't know why, but I'm just not reading up. At the beginning, it said, "I am the Elohim of your father, Abraham." So if there's something coming to you saying that, then I guess it's like right off.
Even if that's the only part, where you understand that your fathers knew and worshiped this Elohim, even if that was the extent of his knowledge, for him it was enough to know that this is who my forefathers worship. Right. This is something that's significant.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah. I mean, it is a voice speaking out.
Exactly.
There's that. There's that like, part.
Oh, okay, yeah. Right. Yeah. I don't know why I just isolated just that one part, but read it. It's like, oh, okay, it makes sense.
Right. And so when we look now, it helps us to understand something that I talk about other times, is that understanding that fear is really this integral part to, it's a key element of our faith, because that fear is an understanding of who the Mosa is and what he's capable of doing. To you, when you get outside of his will and his ways, right? It's an integral part. People who don't have the fear of the Most High, they just do whatever they want to do because it don't matter. There's nobody looking at them sideways, or they don't care, right? Because they don't have that fear, that connection, right? And so, again, when we're looking at this, we're seeing the process unfold before us, of drawing closer to the Most High. Now let's look at a couple verses over here. Let me pull this up. Let's look at this in Deuteronomy. Let's see. What does this say here? 58 and 59.
It says, if you do not guard to do all the words of this Torah that are written in this book, to fear this esteemed and awesome name, Yahweh your Elohim, then Yahweh shall bring upon you and your descendants extraordinary plagues, great and lasting plagues, and grievous and lasting sickness. See the translation of extraordinary. That's a word to use right there.
So when we look at this, right, if you do not guard to do all the words of this Torah that's written in this book, to fear this esteemed and awesome name, then all of these things is about to happen to you, right? All of these things. Like how something's about to happen to Moshe if you don't just sit over it. Right? Fear is a part of the situation, because not just for the simple fact of being, fearful and dreaded, but understanding who the Mosa is and what he's capable of doing.
Because fear Because if there's something to be feared, that means it's a consequence to your actions.
There's a consequence. There's like there's layers to the situation.
Right.
But it's knowledge though.
Right.
Is an understanding that you have that will facilitate the fear. I know that XYZ is gonna happen if I do this elemental P over here. Right? I can put the two things together. And over here, just Deuteronomy is spelled out for you, right? If you don't have these, because why? Because look, if you don't do the things, it's probably because you don't fear him in the first place. And then now you getting these consequences and repercussions as a result of it.
Yeah. It's a cause and effect. When you break it down to the simplest form, it's a cause and effect. It's like, hey, you do this, this happens. You do this, this happens. This is what I want you to do, so this happens. Yeah.
Let's get verses 13 and 14. What's that say?
Ecclesiastes 12:13. Let us hear the conclusion of the entire matter. Fear Elohim and guard his commandments, for this applies to all mankind. For Elohim shall bring every work into right ruling, including all that is hidden, whether good or whether evil.
The whole sum of the matter. Fear Elohim, keep his commands.
And it applies to all mankind.
That's what it says right there.
Not just Israel.
All mankind.
That's what it says right there.
All.
Everybody gonna be held accountable for their actions. He said he's gonna bring every work into judgment or right ruling. The things that's hidden and the things that's good or bad, right? And so that integral part of that is, again, that fear of Elohim, which again is a part of understanding who Elohim is. And that's why it's there in the first place, because you know that he's able, he's willing and able to drop some hot wax anger upon you. Right? And so we see when we look at Moshe and him hiding his face, he knew, if that's all that he knew, was that this is the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. If that's all he knew, it was enough for him to hide his face and be afraid to even look at the holiness of this unquenchable fire that was going on over there. And that's the place where we had to begin at. The same place that he began is understanding who the Mosa is and what he's capable of doing, and how that affects and relates to you and I. And once we get to that place now, once we get to that place of understanding who he is now, that's a help to us. I would think it's a help to us. It would keep you from doing a lot of things if you understood you wasn't really getting away with nothing. Well, you ain't thinking about it like that. It's like, who watching me? I do what I want. Like,
yeah.
But when you have a right understanding of things, to know that you ain't really getting away with nothing.
That's the scary part. Or rather, fearful part. Yeah, I be doing it all the time, man. I be like, man, because the biggest thing is it goes with self-governance, because that's the main thing too, is to be like the whole, even holding yourself accountable or something, is to be like the spirit within you, and you like, what was I watching? Nobody else is in you. I know he watching, so I. You gotta get an account of everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
every idle word it says.
The idle word, all that. You gotta give an account for it.
Yeah. And so that's an integral part. It's an integral part that we see with Moshe over here. We see him going through the processes. Once he figured out what was going on and who he was dealing with, now he is dealing with him accordingly, and knowing that this is the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He deserves the utmost reverence and respect and fear, right? And so when we think about the creator and the sustainer of all things, the fact that he's Elohim, right? The Elohim of your forefathers. They knew it. They knew who he was. He's saying to Moshe, they knew that I was Elohim. Now it's time for you to know it. They knew it. Now you know it. And he did. And he feared Elohim. And again, you know, these things need to be evident in our actions, right? When we say that we're followers of the Most High, when we say that we, you know, that we're Israel, that we manifest Yeshua in the earth today, right? Our every action should be a manifestation of that fact, right? We should be, as when we talked about the messenger, the ambassador, we should be the ambassadors of Messiah, walking around, acting and doing and saying and being that which manifests the character of Yeshua in us. So when we think about the idea of fearing Elohim, we think about the idea of fearing the Most High. Again, this should be evident in our actions. You see, with Moses, it was evident in his actions. He was hiding. He hid his face, right? All right, so let's keep on going down here. So we look over here. If we drop down, let's see here. If we drop down, oh, we got to go back to Shemot. Let's see. We drop down to verse 7. We drop down to verse 8, actually. We drop down to verse 8. We see that part of the thing that the Most High was saying to Moshe, you know, in this encounter, was that he was going to Yahweh to deliver them, or Israel, from Egypt, to deliver. So if we look at this word deliver, this word is not Saul, which is to snatch away. whether in a good or bad sense. Defend, deliver, self, escape, recover, rescue, save. Let's see, this is the do I have the word study? Oh, yeah. Deliverance. This is the word study here. Deliverance often indicated the power of one entity overcoming the power of another. It was frequently expressed as deliverance from the hand, i.e., the power of another. And so when we look over here and we see where the Mosai is talking about delivering Israel from the power of Egypt. And so this is a key thing over here, because understanding that Israel at this time, these people was under the power of Egypt. And so they actually they needed to be delivered. They needed redemption from Egypt at that time. They needed to be relieved from the clutches of Pharaoh and Egypt. Even though we see over here in verse 7, where it says, I have indeed seen the oppression of my people. He's calling Israel my people right here. But in all actuality, the people belong to Egypt. That's why they need to be delivered in the first place. So when we think about the idea of Israel and the Mosa saying it, talking about Israel as my people, we have to look at that really from a prophetic standpoint, because the people was owned by Pharaoh. And then the very fact that the Mossad is speaking of a deliverance bears witness to that fact, that they even need to be delivered in the first place. That that there is a power that's over Israel that needs to be relieved. So we get a glimpse into the necessity of what was going to come in terms of, this whole Exodus situation that's down the road. But when we see through the things that the Mosa is saying to Moshe over here, is just saying that he's going to come down and deliver the people. He's going to come down and snatch away Israel. Even when you think about snatching something, if somebody else got their hands on it already, and then you snatching it with force away from them. yeah, snatching the mic. Right? And so when we see this terminology, this word being used, is letting you know that is besides the fact that Israel's under this oppression of Mitzrayim in the first place. Besides that, but I'm saying that the Most High is given. He's letting it be known that there is a power that is held by Mitzrayim, by Pharaoh, by Egypt, that he's going to take away. that he's going to deliver the people from, that he's going to provide a way of escape for the people and then recover Israel from this thing. But it's getting ready for us to be able to understand this idea of deliverance and the idea of redemption that must happen. This idea of this transition and change of power, right? Where we see where it's interesting that Moses, who's being used, is somebody really who kind of went outside of the structure of Egypt. Like he was like a citizen of Mitzrayim, right? But then through what he did and him going on the run and all that, he exiles himself from there, right? Where he's no longer under that power. He's free.
Mm-hmm.
He's on his own.
Yeah.
So he's been freed already, Moses. And he comes and goes, right? We'll see that he comes and goes. So he freed himself from Mitzrayim, but the people are still bound. And so the Mosai uses this freed individual, this person who has already been freed of the power, to go back now and then to kind of facilitate the freeing of the nation. And so it's interesting when you're thinking about this in terms of kind of thinking about the gospel, for instance. You think about the idea of how those that return back to the Father, those that receive the gospel truth and understand who Yeshua is and what he's done for us, and have had a transformative experience with Yeshua HaMashiach, now are deemed worthy to go and share that message of deliverance with those who are still bound up, just like Moses, right? It's the same process. It's the same thing. Somebody who's bound up ain't got no message for nobody. if you still locked up, how you gonna help somebody else that's locked up if you locked up too, right with them? And so we see in this process, we see this thing going on of Moses getting this understanding, this knowledge of who the Most High is, developing this relationship that at this point, even though it's kind of the understanding or the knowledge is not extensive, but it's enough for him to know who he is and to know that what he's capable of doing, and enough for him to have a unwavering faith in the Most High and the message and the plan. And so we see over here when he hears all of this, we go down and see, if we go down to verse 11, we see Moses understands that this is a huge deal. Like this is magnanimous. This thing that who am I? He says that I'm supposed to go over here to Pharaoh and bring the people out. Moses is like, how am I supposed to go in here and do this? Like he understands the weight of all of this. Right? He knows that this ain't no thing where you just go in there and just, have a word with somebody and it's over. Like it's a battle. It's like a war.
It's like one of us going to talk to Donald Trump, like, hey, Y'all need to stop.
Yeah,
Hey,
this is over.
You gonna listen to us? Like,
This is over right now. Done.
Yeah, right.
Give my people, give me some money or something.
Yeah,
Getting out of
need
here
our reparations. Like,
right now.
come on. The Mosai told me to say this. Like, what?
He sees, right? He understands the weightiness
I hope it happens.
of the situation, right? But again, when we look at Moses, we see humility in Moses, who, by the way, if we look at Numbers 12 and verse 3, what's this say right here?
It says, the man Moshe was very humble, more than all men who were on the face of the earth.
This is just his quality. This is the character of Moses. This is who he is. So when we look at Moses and he's faced this huge task is faced before him, he's not the one that just be like, oh yeah, you picked the right guy.
Right. I'm just the one.
Yeah.
You want me to tell this too?
Yeah.
I'm going.
I'm surprised you ain't found me sooner.
Right? I've been waiting for this.
He's humble about this whole thing. Like, hold on. You got the wrong guy.
I didn't know he was the most humble man. Wow. That's a new scripture. Been over it, but dang.
Right? So Moses is over here. He's like, we can't. This can't be right. Right? This can't be what you got for me to do over here. And again, thinking about looking at Moses and understanding his process is our process. Right? His process is our process. And so we got to be willing to do the thing, whatever the thing is, in humbleness and humility, right? Just like Moses, just like Moshe was, right? If we look at, let's look at a couple verses over here. Yeshayahu, Isaiah 57, Isaiah 57 and 15. Let me pull up hold on a second. Let me get the KJV on this one. Okay.
Let us say the high and lofty, one that inhabiteth eternity, whose name is holy. I dwell in the high and holy place, with him also that is of a contrite and humble spirit, to revive the spirit of the humble, to revive the heart of the contrite one.
So the Most High, we see this, the Most High, the high and lofty one, is ready to do what? To revive the spirit of the humble and to revive the heart of the contrite ones. He gonna do it for these ones, the humble ones.
Right.
That's whose spirit's gonna be revived.
Yep.
Right? The ones that got the contrite ones. Those the ones whose hearts is going to be revived.
What's the opposite of humble?
Haughty, pride.
Pride.
He definitely ain't gonna do it for them, right? Right.
What you need? What you need? Your spirit revived for you prideful. You revive yourself every day.
You don't even need it.
Prideful, yeah. Yep.
And so when we think about these things, when we think about the fact that the meek shall inherit the earth, like the scripture says, right? When we think about these things over here, like the humble ones is the ones that's going to have their spirits revived. And then when we look at Moses, he's the example. He's the one. He's the one. He was out on the run from murdering somebody. Like it was murder. It was murder. Like he looked both ways and went and laid wait and murdered somebody. But in his heart, I hate when people say, he's really a good person.
Man.
But he really was a good person.
He was just though. You see, going with your, I don't know if you kill him or not, but he said that's the step. That's what's necessary.
It was shadily. It was
I don't
shadily
think
done.
he meant to kill him.
It was shadily done. If he meant to, if the person,
Like pushed him up
if the person deserved justice, recompense.
That's cleaning up.
Yeah, my bad.
But you know what I'm saying? But I don't think that was his intent to kill the man.
Well, he intended to do something bad to him because he premeditated it. Whenever he looked back and forth to see.
But hold on.
What
is that? Exodus 2?
Yeah, it's just in the last chapter that we looked at.
I got to examine it.
That's why I hate Mac. In the spinning circle.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about it, but yeah, the computer running real good. I haven't been on Mac in a minute, so I was getting my bearings on what's going on.
All right, so look over here, right? Verse 11. So we see that. What do it say?
Let me read it. And it says, and it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown that he went out unto his brethren and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting a Hebrew, one of his brethren. Okay. And he looked to his way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him. Well, okay.
Yeah, that was it.
I mean, he spied on a. Well, wait. Go to that word smiting there. It says an Egyptian smiting in Hebrew.
I think I might have been thinking about the cartoon Moses.
Yeah, what was he doing there? Let's get that word there.
Smiting.
It's right there.
Go down a little more. Okay.
Hold on, which?
You're on the right.
Spied. Oh, smiting.
Okay, to strike severely. Okay, crash off to beat. Okay. Indeed, kill, murder, punish. I'm wondering if this Egyptian killed that Hebrew. And he said, no, you just can't be killing. We don't know. Or if you just beating them like a slave.
Yeah, that punish.
Yeah, it could be all of this. When you see this, I think this is like a this is like euphemistically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So it could mean this to go forward or to indeed kill. Or it could, but it literally means to strike.
Now let's go back to slavery.
Yeah.
I'm keeping it 100. The mindset I got now, but I mean, I see that and I get an opportunity to. I'm not turning. I'm sorry. I'm not turning. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not with that. First of all, look. Even if you okay, we keep the commandments. This and that. Don't murder. Don't do this. Do that. But why is it okay for it to just happen to us? That's my thing.
I mean,
so he looked and he said, "Oh, all right," because he saw something that wasn't right.
Yeah.
Clearly. So you gotta take action. Like we can't just accept it.
I mean, I don't know how you can expect anything else. When people do stuff to America, they strike back, right?
Yeah.
We're talking regular life preservation. You ain't run up on slapping no tiger, and they're not going to maul you.
Yeah.
Any animal it's gonna get mad.
Yeah.
Any meek animals, a bunny will bite you. You get crazy with it. So I'm just saying.
Well, maybe if it got rabies or something.
Yeah.
No, I held bunnies and they get crazy. Like they don't like them, they'll bite.
I think the point that we making over here is the fact that from Moses being kind of this raw, he's like a raw, uncut jewel over here. Rough. He's rough around the edges. And when we look over here and see the process that he went through, the Most High is able to see his potential and deal with him based on that.
Right.
And so I think that that's important when we think about, the Most High, how he deals with us, and saying that, he gets us not at our, at our highest moments, when we're the most worthy of being a follower or servant of the Most High, but he gets us, in that time when we're not, and he changes us into somebody who is worthy based on the qualities that have already been planted on the inside of us. And if we was to look back at Exodus chapter 2, understanding that Moses did indeed have compassion for his people, and he wanted for his people to be freed, right? He wanted for his people to not be under the rule of these wicked individuals. And so we can see with what the Most High is doing is making those things a reality, right? But he's using, again, Moses, who has these qualities within him that need to be cultivated and that need to be kind of nurtured and brought to fruition, to the fullness, right? And so we see that Moses, he was about justice, right? And so that probably was part of the reason why he was chosen. But we see again, even though he was those things, on top of that, he was also humble, right? And willing to follow the creator of all things. Okay, so if we keep on going down over here, we see that if we look at, let's see here, verse 12. Verse 12 is an interesting verse because if we see over here, it's a little bit funny to me, where he says, "Certainly I will be with thee and shall be a token unto thee that I have sent thee when thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt. And you shall serve me, serve Elohim upon this mountain." So the only way that he gonna know that that Elohim is going to do what he said he's going to do is for him to actually go through the thing and have it happen.
Yeah.
The only sign spoken of is to be seen after the deliverance is done. That's how you'll know. You'll know that I was there with you whenever you on the other side.
See what I say? Which is what? Moses had obedience and faith. Because you need both of them to do it.
And it wasn't about, okay, if this is real, then show me a sign beforehand.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's the opposite of that.
Right.
The sign that you gonna get is the sign that you when you after the fact.
The mission is complete.
The mission's done.
That's how you want to know.
That's how you know.
That's the sign.
When you make it out this whole thing alive, then that's how you know that I was with you. But you gotta go through the thing in order to do it. You can't know ahead of time. You can only know after. That's the only way you gonna know. You ain't getting no signs. You ain't getting no little hints. You gonna just have to just go and do what the Mosa say do, and then whenever you successful at the end, then that's how you'll know.
But then here, that's why I always say too, like, that's how the Most High is real. Like, we manifest His Spirit. When you act out what He says to do, you're manifesting Him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
But it got to be about faith, right? It's a faith thing.
Right.
It's about you having faith in the thing. It's not about you sitting up here ahead of time knowing beforehand. You walking out His will is the proof. That's the only proof you getting. You going out here and being faithful and walking in obedience, and then receiving the benefits after the fact. That's the proof.
Yep.
He's saying just you did this is a faith walk, he told him basically. So you go in faith and do what I say, and then whenever you get on the other side, then you'll know. Right? Okay, so, and then now we look at 13, where he says, now he got to go back and talk to Israel. And he got to go back and tell Israel who it was that sent him on this mission. And when he says to them, it says that the Elohim of your fathers is the one that sent me. They're going to say to me, what is his name? And then so he like, what am I supposed to say to that when they asked me that? I guess he knew what they was going. He knew what they was going to do. Like he knew they was going to be like, well, who is it? Who is it that is sending you? And so when we think about the idea of a name, it's also about, it's not just about what the actual name is, but what's behind the name and what the name represents. Right? So when we look over here at this, let's see here. What is his name? What is his name? What is his Shim? Sham. Okay. Perhaps rather through the idea, definite, conspicuous position. Okay. Appellation, a mark, memorial of an individual, by implication, honor, authority, character, name, Renown, Rapport. So some of these things, we think about these things, these are the things that go along with the name, a certain infamy that goes along with the name, right? A certain renown or rapport, character, authority. On whose authority is all this been done, right? All of these things that we got to think about that goes along with the name. And so it was important to have all of these things, in the understanding when he went back, because he wasn't able to just say the Elohim of your fathers is the one that sent me. And so when we look at verse 14, it says, this is interesting the way that he says this, right? Where in verse 14, he says unto Moses, he says, Moses asked the Most High, what is he supposed to say to the people? Right? And then so the Most High says to Moses, I am that I am, he said. Thou shalt say unto the children, I am hath sent you. I be what I will be. Is what that when you look in the Hebrew that says Aya Esher Aya, I be what I will be, or I be hath sent you. The one that be is the one that sent you. The one that is, right, is the one that sent you. And so when we look, people sit up here and they say that the Most High's name is what he said right here. Aya, or the people who say that, most of those people say Ahaya, which is interesting in itself. But what's happening over here is the Most High is really giving characteristics about himself. He didn't even get to the name yet. He's saying, I am going to be what you need for me to be. I am what you need for me to be. Right? He's making the declaration about himself over here. But when you keep on going, right, at verse 15, where he says, moreover, so on top of that, what I said over there, ode, continuance, repeatedly, still, more, again, besides all that, henceforth, right? All of these words that's leading towards something else. All that being said, he said, thus you are to say to the children of Israel, Yahweh, Elohim of your fathers, Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, this is my name forever. This is my remembrance to all generations. So if there's any doubt in your mind about who it is that sent you, now you don't have to have any doubt anymore, because I'm spelling it out for you right over here. You take this information back to the people and you should be good. Right? That's what he said. And this name right here, this name that I'm telling you, this is my name forever. Olam, that probably says. This is my name forever. Let me see if it says Olam. Olam, forever. Time, undefinite. Concealed. This is my name until the vanishing point where you can't see no further. All the way over there. Olam. Out of mind. Time out of mind. He said. This is my name. And so he don't leave no stone unturned in terms of who he is. He don't leave no stone unturned in terms of who he is and what he wants for Moshe to do over here and who sent him. And he wants to let Moses know and the people know that whatever it is that they need from the Most High, from the Almighty to be done, that is going to be done by him. And they getting ready to see some things happen that's going to be pretty amazing. This whole burning bush situation is just the tip of the iceberg. If he thought he seen something that was crazy by looking at a bush that's on fire that's not burning up, wait till we get a load of all this other stuff that's going to happen in after the fact. But I think when we look at this and getting an understanding of all of this and thinking about it in terms of Moses being kind of having this almost a conversion type experience where he understands who the Mosa is, and then he is turned around and given this great task, this great mission to do, under the guidance of the Almighty. And so, through this, we're able to see kind of what our process would be, should be, what it is whenever we are called by the Mosa, by getting to that place of understanding who the Mosa is and knowing who he is and having that fear, right? And really, just like with Moses, he don't know what the future holds at this point. All he knows is the Mosa is telling him to do something, and then he's just supposed to do it. And so he don't have a map for what his situation is going to be. His only map is the Most High said, go. And he's going to tell him what to do from there. He's going to be with you. So I'm going to be what you're going to have for me to be, what you want for me, what you need for me to be. I be it. I'm already it. Right? And so it's about understanding who the Father is and understanding what he's capable of doing, and us being able to just walk in faith just on the strength of understanding that the Most High is willing and able to do what's necessary in order for things to be done. All right. And so when we look at the how this chapter ends, the Most High basically says, you're gonna go in there and you're gonna get my people, and we getting out of here. And you guys, the daughters is gonna plunder. The daughters is gonna plunder. It's the sons and the daughters is gonna plunder Egypt, right? And that's just it. And then you'll know that this, like you said before, you'll know that I am who I said I am when you walking out of it.
So we plundering Egypt right now. We plundering America. What you trying to say right now?
I'll just say what they say. Yeah. That's just what the verses is saying. It's gonna be a time when we walking out of here, with our plunder. right? But the process got to be about the Most High at the forefront of this. When we look and understand what we see with this over here, this is under the leading and guiding of the Almighty, right? And He is the one. He said, "I will deliver you from Egypt. I will deliver you from this bondage," right? And so, Moses is able to move forward because he knows that he's not able to do it. But he's able to move forward because he knows that the Most High is able to do it. And so the same thing is true for us when we sit up here and we look at ourselves, and somebody sit up here and tell us that you're the chosen people, you're Israel, and you look at yourself as this this wretched person, this wicked individual. We have to know that the Most High is able to look on the inside of us and see those good parts on the inside, and he's able to build on that, right? We may not be able to look at ourselves and see anything that's worth anything, just like Moses didn't look at himself and he said, I'm not able to do this thing right here. But the Most High is able to look at us and see something that he's able to work with and build with. But we have to be able to trust in the Almighty and allow him to do his part, and he most definitely will be able to draw any little speck of goodness and grow that thing into something that's strong and mighty, right, through his power and his doings, right? Okay, so does anyone have any thoughts or questions or comments about Exodus chapter 3? Okay, so that being said, I think we're going to be done for now. And Yah willing, we will be back to continue on with our look at Exodus and see what happens next with our hero Moses. Okay, all right. So that being said, we will say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.